Welcome back, Red Spotters, to another show here on the Red Spotlight Entertainment Podcast. I'm your host today, Alexis J. Soto, and I am joined by the all-knowing, the all-seeing, the Mr. Oracle himself, Peter and Martinez, joining us from on high. How are you doing today?
I'm alive. We need to work on that intro. I think we can add a couple more things to it. It's a good start.
They're not doing it for you?
It could use a little bit more pumping up. You take what you can get.
You're always welcome to write your own intro, and I can read it for you, if that's what you please.
Yeah, you know what? I think we'll start doing that.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay. I can have those every now and then. So today, we are gathered once again in our second edition of our Scorsese Files, the show in which we dive into the long history of Marty Scorsese and his films that have pretty much shaped what is cinema today. As we mentioned in the previous episode, a giant in the film industry. In the last episode, we discussed his early works from Mean Streets to Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, New York, New York, and The King of Comedy. Now, I'd highly suggest you go back and listen to that episode because there was a lot that was discussed in that first episode about Scorsese and his works. And today, we have perhaps, and that's a big perhaps because the films we just discussed were also pretty, well known. But perhaps in this installment, we are tackling his biggest hits yet. And the four films that we'll be discussing today are Goodfellas from 1990, Casino from 1995, Gangs of New York from 2002, and The Departed from 2006. Of course, The Departed was the film where he won his first Academy Award for directing back in the year of 2007. So those are the films that we are discussing today on Red Spotlight. Wait for it, 198. So, and I got nothing out of Peter. Okay. All right, so Peter.
Yes.
How would you like to do these films today?
I think we should go in order of which is least cinema to which is most cinema.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe would have to be as far as least.
We wouldn't even discuss it. We're not discussing it, so obviously that's where that one goes. Yeah.
Once again, sarcasm, people.
Well, I mean,
it ain't no Mandalorian, I'll tell you that. Because, apparently Mandalorian is like the most, oh my God, thing in the world. Go watch Dolomite and Dr. Sleep, please, people. I'm just putting that out there. Okay, so, and are you being serious? So we're going to rank it from least cinema to most cinema? Or are you saying that perhaps we'll tackle this in terms of what we liked least in these and then go and build up to our favorite?
Sure. Although we might have different opinions.
We might have different opinions on that. Although, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious which one of these is the best, but
most loved.
Most loved for sure. But I mean, to just talk generally about these list of films, this is everything I look for in what I consider cinema to be. And I don't mean that as hyperbole. I don't mean that as a joke. I absolutely am genuine when I say that these movies are in every way the kind of stories that many of us would not know of if they hadn't been presented on screen. And if you hadn't had an auteur like Scorsese approach them in the way that he came from. These movies are, I think it's pretty safe to say, at least for at least two, but maybe you can make the case for all four of them, among the best movies in the last few decades, maybe ever. One in particular.
I'll put it this way.
Yes.
If they were on Disney Plus, I would totally watch.
Yeah, I really wish they were on Disney Plus. And it's just like...
It could be in my recommended bar next to Dumbo.
Yeah, I'm happy HBO Max is going to use whatever catalog they have to promote their Criterion films that they have on there.
Yeah.
I really am.
I'm actually really excited for HBO Max.
I am as well. I just wish there was like a Cinema Lovers version. I know we had Criterion. What was it? The
Criterion.
Filmstruck. No, Filmstruck.
Filmstruck. Oh yeah.
Filmstruck was
because that had Criterion and then also other films.
Right. And of course now it died because that's I think HBO Max primarily, and then all the other services.
But they have the regular Criterion.
Yes, they do.
And I'm still paying for it.
I just wish we had a streaming service where we had like all of the the best one, like maybe like an AFI streaming service would be fun.
Oh yeah, okay, I see what you mean.
So it's
that's
like,
impossible.
I just like a curation of these things, and not to get too lost with not ignoring these movies, but I think it's important to us to discuss something that Mark Ruffalo just threw out there about a national endowment that Scorsese could lead. Can we talk a little bit about what that would mean, what that would look like? A national endowment, for those who are not aware of what that means.
Basically, it's just like you give artists money and then
they make their
movie without, it's basically without...
You bypass the studio system, and it would be something that would be set up by the government. So
I think the way that Mark Ruffalo suggested it, he didn't suggest the government. I think he suggested that Marty himself put up the money. I suggested the government do it.
Well, I feel it should, but again, not everybody feels that way.
I think the arts should be promoted in a big way.
I feel like that should be a big... I mean, Mr. Rogers argued for that.
PBS. I think the arts are vitally important.
Julie Andrews consistently fights for those, as it's being, stripped away ever so slowly. But yeah, right. And the way that Ruffalo had suggested is that Scorsese, as his own private person and he's kind of his own institution, just start one up where there would be an endowment for these artists to do so. Netflix kind of does that, although
in the beginning it was a little bit like that because they would get artists and they're just okay, here's the money, go make whatever.
But now as we're going into the
they're
streaming
getting more competitive.
Wars, with the streaming wars now in full swing, there are more selective, shall we say, with the content that they put money into, in which the most example of that would be is how it seems as if there is a no TV show past season 3 rule for whatever reason, and then they keep getting axed. A lot of their original programming keeps getting canceled for whatever reason.
Yeah. I don't know. They obviously have some metrics that they're going
clearly.
by. I don't know what it is, though.
I mean, it was surprising BoJack was just like, okay, we're going to end it at season 6 when the creators were like, we had more in mind, but okay, we'll end it here.
That's one of the things where it's like, I felt it was time for the show to end.
Well, I haven't seen it since season 4, so I can't. I can't.
But
comment.
I mean, I don't know any show that needs to run past 6 seasons.
I understand that, but if the creators had more in mind, well, I mean,
yeah.
I definitely, I get what you mean, though.
I feel like at around season 6, though, that's where shit starts to get a little repetitive.
Exactly, you're exactly right. When things begin to come a little stale or go downhill,
no matter how good the show is.
But the point is, with an endowment that would be spearheaded by Scorsese, these movies bypass the studio system, which mean that their inevitable approval for these films to actually happen would not depend on the current market system, which again repeatedly has to be pointed out. Why do we worship the market? Okay, I'm not going to get there. I'm not going to get into a roundabout capitalism. But
when it works, it's great. But when it doesn't work, it's pretty fucking bad. And again, it does produce incentives that might be pretty opposed to like the human condition and our psyche. Because people are more depressed now than ever. And I think a lot of it can be, it's all about being successful, making money,
Well, I do believe many studies have shown that a lot of our anxieties in today's day and age are almost entirely sourced by economic disparities.
Yeah. So there's a lot of issues with that. But I mean...
That's not today's show, guys. But I think it's a wonderful idea. And I would love to see it happen. I think that'd be a wonderful idea for these. Now, I don't know how you would go about doing that, because
you would never get it funded.
That's just the problem. We're talking about Scorsese, who we cannot forget was begging on his knees to all of these distributors to do Irishman, and they all said, no, we can't fund that. Netflix, by some miracle, agreed to do it. And by the way, I don't know if it's ever been mentioned on this show, but the upcoming Irishman film, which they've yet to spend on the what will surely be hugely expensive Oscar race for Irishman, it was close to $250 million. Or at least it was over $200 million.
Holy shit.
For a 3.5-hour movie.
I mean, maybe if you can get, I don't know, some big spenders, you get one of those billionaires that's like, hey, I give a shit about the arts. I donate $1 million every year.
Michael Bloomberg is about to waste millions of dollars. So somebody ask him.
Get one of these millionaires that wants to run for president, millionaires and billionaires, pull them aside and be like, hey, instead of that, do this instead. I think it'd be easier to do that than to do it through the government, because it's like, well, there's one person that's living on the streets or is unable, to do certain things. As long as there's poverty and stuff like that, you're never going to get in this climate people to be like, hey, let's divert money to make movies.
Right, because clearly homelessness is a much larger issue than, I'm sorry, where we are with film right now.
I think we as a society should push the arts forward. I'm saying it's impossible for that future to happen.
The government should play a role in this, but it can't because of the realities that exist right now.
And it doesn't have to be like billions upon billions. They can be small movies. No one's saying you need to make the next Avatar with these things.
Well, I mean, if you get James Cameron involved, watch out with your wallet.
James Cameron doesn't make small movies. But no, it's just like, here's a few, 10,000 here, 20,000 here, small movies. See what good up and coming artists can do with it. Maybe for some of them, get a bigger budget. I don't know exactly how you would divvy up the money. But yeah, I think the arts are important to
Clearly,
us.
I think we both feel that way. I mean, we're doing this show for a reason. It's not just because we like
shit on fake cinema.
Yeah, like the Disney live action remakes.
Have you seen the Lady and the Tramp live action remake yet? Oh, okay.
Why would I?
Okay. I don't know. It's there.
No, I won't. I will never see it.
Okay.
Because I don't care.
I won't either. I was just curious of you.
No.
I want to ask Moreno if she's seen it.
I mean, I can tell you what she'll think of it. I liked it.
I remember loving the original
Lady
cartoon.
and the Tramp?
Yeah. Those racist cats went way over my head as a kid.
They did with me too.
I just thought that was a cute little song.
Yeah.
We are Siamese, if you please. Anyways.
So Scorsese, in the movies that we're talking about today, we're talking about Casino, Goodfellas, Gangs of New York, and The Departed. Clearly, the main theme among all of them is that they're all based on gangs.
Mm-hmm. Let's start with Gangs of New York.
That one, I really liked. And
I did too.
Good, we're on the same page. What I really liked it. I think one of the things that was most immediately noticeable about this movie, to my shock, is that, we're doing a gangster movie, but we're doing it in a way no one has done it before. We're going to go back in time. It's not in the 1900s. We're going to go back to the 1800s. In fact, this movie opens up, I believe, in the 1840s. We're talking about New York during America's the 19th century. This movie primarily takes place during the time of the Civil War with, I think, 1861 or 2.
Martin Scorsese says, I'll go back in time, but I am still not leaving New York.
I mean, you gotta admire the balls for that, honestly. And it's, curiously enough, Daniel Day-Lewis is in this film, as well as Leo DiCaprio and others. But again, I found it just funny to me, like Daniel Day-Lewis playing this, for all intents and purposes, this nativist, nativist racist, xenophobic racist. While in another universe, Steven Spielberg directed Daniel Day-Lewis as Lincoln in the exact same timeline. So there's that.
Oh, let me do the quick synopsis.
Yes.
Provided by our sponsors, Letterboxd XD.
Exactly. And this is from 2002. That's after 9/11, and that plays into this later on at the end of the movie.
Yes, it was released in 2002. I do want to say a quick shout out from our sponsors, Letterboxd XD. If you sign up for a subscription to Letterboxd XD within the next 3 months, put in the code Red Spotlight, you will get 10% off your annual subscription.
That's right. We worked so hard for that. You better use it.
Yes. We got him, though. We got him. America was born in the streets.
I love these descriptions so much.
I know. They make me laugh. It's 1863. America was born... Oh, they say it twice. America was born in the streets. Amsterdam Valen returns to the 5 Points of America to seek vengeance against the psychotic gangland kingpin Bill the Butcher, who murdered his father years earlier. With an eager pickpocket by his side and a whole new army, Valen fights his way to seek vengeance on the Butcher and restore peace in the area.
And Valen is portrayed here by Leonardo DiCaprio. And this is the first collaboration with Leo and Marty, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
Right. And Daniel Day-Lewis is playing Bill the Butcher. Bill the Butcher in
Bill the Butcher.
Butcher in this movie. One of the things that'll probably get to be quite redundant is, of course, as with all of his films, masterfully directed, beautifully shot. The sets are fantastic, and of course, the performances.
The sets are great.
The performances are ascendant. And yeah, getting back to the sets, like, they're sets, but I guess to an extent you know that they are, but they don't look like it. Mm-hmm. They look like you're being transported to that time period.
You could tell a big goal with this film was to be as historically accurate to the time period as possible. And there's so many little things that are going on in that happen within the film that just give you the sense of like the time period, like a lot of draft dodging, a lot of what's it called? Like someone's house at some point gets set on fire.
Arsony.
Yeah, and they don't got the money to pay to put it out, so the firemen just watch it burn.
Of course, the war is happening. You mentioned the draft and the draft dodging, but there's also a lot of racism, a lot of, I think at some points...
A pretty big historical moment happens at the end.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I wasn't entirely sure what that was, but we'll discuss... I
think I can look up the exact name.
Of course. We'll get into it as we get into the ending of the movie. But that happens at the very end of the film. Other stuff that's what's happening here is, well, of course, Civil War is happening. There are a lot of, this is one of the ugly points of the movie. Ugly in terms of, watching it happen, but of course, being the film, a lot of, it's not as heavy, I would say, as other films of this time period would be, because it's not the main focus, but it's definitely lingering in the background. The racism and the hatred for African Americans, and again,
and immigrants.
Of course, we had just mentioned the xenophobic nativism that is kind of encapsulated by Bill the Butcher, but I'm sorry. Without due respect to the immigrants and the things that they're being, thrown at in this movie, casually in the background, there are blacks that are being lynched as we get to the ending of the film and massacred and literally butchered. I think even set on fire, if I'm not mistaken, during the climax of the film. And it's something that's not in the focus, but it's just there. And it's disgusting to see, but it's definitely something that is historically accurate. And this is happening in New York. This is the North. This ain't the South, which I think to some people might be a little surprising.
For some people, growing up in, if you have like just a standard high school education, even a college education, I don't think, I think most people come away with the idea of like, oh, the North good, South bad. And it's like not necessarily like racism was still very rampant everywhere within the within all of the United
including
States.
Asian Americans, which they were definitely in this film in the background.
Oh
and
yeah.
had many
The
vicious.
Irish.
God, yeah.
They hated the Irish.
I don't understand any racism, to be clear. Why they hated the Irish? I guess it's implied that it goes back to a long history in the homeland of a war waging between Ireland and okay, Bill the Butcher. He's not Irish. He hates the Irish. So what is he exactly? Is he from
English?
Okay, he's just English. Okay.
Well, that's where they all came from.
Exactly.
But they're American at that point,
right?
Because he doesn't have any accent or anything,
right?
Like that. But yeah, his ancestors, and then of course, most of the immigrants coming at that point were Irish, I believe.
Exactly.
And then that's where a lot of the anti-immigration sentiment
came
from.
And Bill is born American, right? Again, that's implied.
Yeah,
right.
I believe that's implied.
Okay.
Although it is interesting, this is kind of, again, rather nuanced. A lot of the politicians don't give a shit about the immigrants per se, but they're like, if we clothe them and feed them, they'll vote for us.
I mean, like isn't that what the American dream is about?
Like at the end, something happens and a lot of people die. A lot of immigrants die. And they're like, well, get ready to have bread and drink ready when the boats get tomorrow. We lost a lot of votes tonight. Like that's the way some of the politicians saw it. And it was like, again, the way elite. They would put you... to me, the story is very basic. Like,
yes,
very basic. I think most of the point of the film is just to really engross you in that time. And of course, the characters are compelling, but like so much of it is I found entertaining was just watching the United States, New York in this time period. Like, this is a film I think would be great if you have a cool teacher to play it in a history class. Like, there's so much little things you can pick up on. And it's kind of brutal, even when it got better. Because in the beginning of the film, it almost feels like a post-apocalyptic when they have that first battle.
I was thrown off, I have to admit.
Right?
I was
like, what is this?
I thought, first of all, I wasn't even aware that Gangs of New York would be a period piece, like a deep period piece. But like the opening was almost like something out of Mad Max or something.
It was crazy. But even when they flash forward, like, I don't know, 17, 15 years.
20, I think.
It's still, they're walking, 20 years, they're walking around and they're like, is that a dead person in the street? Yeah. Like it's just kind of normal. People die in the streets and then that's it. And it's not like they have it any worse off than anywhere else in the United States. It's just like, that's the way life was at that time. Pretty crazy, especially considering now. I mean, it's not like we don't have problems now, but usually there's a dead body in the street, at least in the United States. People are like, hey, oh shit, there's a dead body in the street.
I mean, if there are any parallels between today and the film is perhaps not to this extent yet, although that's a matter of opinion, the level of the xenophobic nativism that's displayed in the film. And I
think it's a good show that it's a good example. I mean, that it's always been there.
Absolutely. It's always stayed with us. It's never really gone away.
Yeah.
And at first, I'm sorry, you really lit off the match here, but
go ahead.
It's only further. The film is only further evidence that, of course, this xenophobic nativism, for whatever reason, has, like racism and sexism, has always kind of lingered in our society. But it's like, in particular with nativists, it's kind of like the ultimate sense of irony, because like it doesn't occur to them that, hey, your ancestors, they didn't weren't born here. We literally had to commit a genocide to take this wonderful land from the people who were actually put on that land first. It doesn't occur to them that perhaps we were the immigrants that came here and ripped away the natives, you know?
And the answers you'll get from people are both like wildly different and both terrifying, because both these same answers will usually come out of the same people's mouth, but at different times. They'll say one like, oh, like, I'm not my ancestors. Do you expect me, to apologize for something I wasn't a part of?
Guns. You talk about guns and religion. They always point to the ancestors. Are you being a hypocrite there?
No, but then the other part is that they'll say like, they'll be, and then this is where it's really creepy. It's like, well, yeah, well, just because my ancestors were they're proud of the ancestors because they were conquerors and they did this and they did that, and it's like, whoa.
So it makes no difference to you that they actually had to exterminate a group of people just to get where you're sitting at right now. It makes no difference that all of that blood was spilt.
Well, they're simultaneously proud of their ancestors and then say, whoa, we didn't do it. You're like, wait, you're talking about me.
I feel it's like those same people who were bitching about the Confederate statues being taken down in the South. It's like, guys, really? You're going to... I don't want to blow this thing out of proportion, but it's like, it is a fact in American life that in the South especially, part of what they consider to be their heritage and their culture is imbued with the history of the Confederacy, which is something that...
Yeah, but that's why I say fuck their heritage and culture.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, because I don't... why do you hold something so close to your heart that literally killed hundreds of people, millions of people?
Yeah.
So, again, you're right. There's a lot of commentary happening in the movie. In particular, and it is an interesting watch because of all of what you're seeing happen.
This xenophobia, this hatred of immigrants, this hatred of other people has always been with us. But it also it changes with time. Like, no one's going to look at an Irishman and be like, go back to your country. Like, no one's going to say that today. But at that time, holy shit, call them... I think a lot of derogatory... There's certain derogatory words that has something to do with potatoes. I don't want to accidentally say it, but I'm sure there was some words like that. And it shows it's always about the other. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people, they'll try and say like, oh no, the issue is between, white people and, these other immigrants. They're the bad ones, either Mexicans or from the Middle East or whatever, but white people have our shit together. And it's like, oh, these are racists, obviously, but that shows just like what a small grasp they have on history, because the idea of white people has changed constantly throughout history. And it's changed as, it's actually changed the less racist we've gotten. The less racist we've gotten, more and more and more people are allowed into that category of white, till the idea of whiteness is kind of going to be kind of useless, which is a good thing. But yeah, I find it interesting, like, because you'll see people try to talk about immigration today, and it's like, oh, the issue is them, and it sounds exactly like every other ignorant idiot throughout the entirety of the history of the United States, and it's very much in display in this film.
I mean, I think we even see it in Casino and in Goodfellas, but a lot of the degrees of separation between these different groups of people that, in today's society, we just all kind of throw them all into the same category of being white. But I know, like in Goodfellas and in Casino, there's many references to like the Italians, the Jews, the Irish, like all three of these groups in particular, as we're seeing in these films that we're covering today, at some point seem to be at war with each other. Whereas in today, we have a Jewish candidate for president, but he's not considered to be somebody who is, let's just say, of color, not a color, but like
minority
exactly.
candidate.
He's just white and old. So, The difference
he is old.
He is.
But yeah, I find that, to me, the best thing about Gangs of New York is the history.
Absolutely. But I will say, I do like the story. It is basic, but I do like the story, and I think it mostly works because of the performances.
In this film, and maybe this might be, yeah, you know what? I don't think it's that controversial. Is basically held up, like almost every film he's in, by what's his
Daniel
name?
Day-Lewis.
Daniel Day-Lewis as Bill the Butcher.
Uh-huh.
He is just magnetic. He has such a magnetic.
Is that really
personality
controversial? Because you have, Lincoln had some good performances, but Phantom Threat also has some good performances. But like, it's mainly him.
Like Leo's good in this, but he's doing Leo. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Cameron Diaz is good.
Yeah.
She's doing Cameron Diaz. Oh, you know who I do love? What's that actor? He's the one with the bat. I've always loved him as an actor. Let me see if I can find
John C. Reilly?
Oh, Brendan Gleeson.
Brendan Gleeson. The bat? What?
He's Mad-Eye Moody in Harry Potter.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm
Yeah,
talking about?
Mad-Eye Moody. I know him.
Okay.
Yeah.
That actor. Do you remember who he was in the film?
He was the Irish guy that they put up for office, right?
For the candidate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love him in everything.
He was great in this. Yeah. Just like in a general sense, the story is as what you just described in the synopsis, right? This guy's father was killed by a bull the butcher, and it's a revenge story. Not the most memorable of ways, but it's also, I wasn't bored, you know? But again, I liked the relationship that we got between Bill the Butcher and with Valen. It was interesting how just to see those two get close to each other. And I was wondering for a bit there if Valen would really go through with it, because at certain points in the movie, you do see a sort of affection between the two of them grow.
Yeah, that was interesting. Because one of the turning points in the film is, well, at first it's like he's getting close to him because he wants to kill him, but all of a sudden, like, again, the guy does have a magnetic personality, and he takes him up under his wing, and they almost develop like a sort of father-son surrogate
That's a
type
theme
relationship.
in these movies. One that just went to my mind instantly, although kind of different, but a little bit similar, was how not Corleone, Frank Costello in The Departed took Matt Damon under his wing.
Yeah.
So those relationships have a common recurrence here. But as far as, I think for me, that was kind of what kept me engaged in the film, was the relationship.
Well, the turning point was when there's an assassination attempt made on Bill the Butcher, and he stops it.
Right.
And he realized he just kind of did it on instinct. Like he didn't even, like, he just genuinely was protective of him. And then he's like, you kind of looked in the mirror like, what the fuck am I doing?
Like, this guy killed my dad. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, he's the enemy. Do you want to talk about the climax?
Let's do it, because it's kind of an explosion.
The climax is based off a real historical event called the New York City Draft Riots. And I remember learning this, I think, in my uncle's class.
Your uncle's a history teacher in our public education system in our hometown.
He's a fantastic teacher.
Right, in our hometown of Tatooine. I'll have you know that he was actually my favorite teacher out of all of them, really, in my entire career as far as high school is concerned. So he's great.
He knows this. He knows his stuff. He's really good. And I remember learning this. This is from Wikipedia, which, despite what teachers think, is actually an amazingly good reference point.
Yeah.
It happened in July 13th to 16th, 1863, known at the times as Draft Week, where violent disturbances in Lower Manhattan, widely regarded as the culmination of white working class discontent with new laws passed by Congress that year to draft men to fight in the ongoing American Civil War. Basically huge riots by working class white men saying, fuck this war. This has nothing to do with us. Because they were being drafted. And they built that up throughout the film of like people getting draft requests and just throwing them away. A lot of poor people, it's like they need money, so they sign up for the draft or food. And I don't know how many people died here, but they do show it somewhat in the film with one of his friends being hanged. But they took out a lot of their aggression on the black people in the city at the time, because they looked at them and they said, "You're the reason that we have to go to war and die."
Yeah,
F you.
That's the point where it got pretty fucking. Well, I mean, it all is ugly to be real, but it's like you almost I mean, you really do feel for the immigrants here because it's not their war per se, and there is a certain sense of righteousness about them in rebelling against the elite who is really just using them for cannon fodder, as we've seen throughout the film. But then they go out of their way to massacre.
Well, I don't sympathize with them that much.
Yeah, I don't either. That's why for me, that's where it all just kind of falls apart, because really what it's all...
Well, because a lot of these immigrants are racist too.
Exactly.
And not only the immigrants, but the working people that were there.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you see this in the United States as well. So it's like you have...
You mean today?
Yeah, today. Where you have like Trump country. And it's like, you can say something along the lines of like, well, jobs are gone, but then it's like, but then these people turn around and they channel their xenophobia and their hatred and all their anger at immigrants, and they do it to support Trump, and they put their hats on, they scream about building that wall, they cheer at children in cages along the border. It's the same shit. It's the same shit. Again, they're not directly going out like in these riots. Times are a little different. But you're supporting the same kind of you're scapegoating your issues. And that's kind of an issue that America has always had. The scapegoating of issues to other people.
Which is what Adolf Hitler did when he came to power as the chancellor. Yeah. So
that's why it's scary.
That's why people get scared when they see stuff like this, guys. A little bit, but it is an important film, and we should talk about how it ends. So, I mean, first of all, as it was staged, the third act is bombastic and brilliant and explosive in its execution. Everybody dies, basically, so that's the ending of the movie. But then as...
no, not really.
Well, don't they?
Our two leads live.
Oh, well, mostly. But, I mean, our two leads get away. But mostly everybody else
Leo
is wiped out.
And Cameron Diaz.
Yeah. They get their happy ending, which is a rarity in these movies. In Scorsese's
they move
movies.
Out
California?
West.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's the same ending as the Newsies. They go to Santa Fe.
Okay.
By the way, these assholes made me watch the Newsies.
By the way, define who you mean by these assholes.
You, Kyle, Moreno.
No,
okay,
no.
Okay.
I never saw Newsies.
Oh, you weren't there. That's right.
I wasn't there.
Yeah, you had called and then we hung up on you. Okay.
Yeah. Like that fucker always does on me.
That was fun. Anyway, continue.
If you're listening, go fuck yourself. Anyway, but everybody else gets wiped out, more or less. And Bill the Butcher meets his end. And then the final moments of the film, you see New York, a transition or a time lapse, if you will, of New York from what it was back then in 1860-ish to where we are at that point, which would be 2002. And I looked for it because I had a feeling, I think there's a common song that's played over it. I looked for it as we're looking into the final shots of the film of present-day New York. I know that this movie's release date was pushed back because of what happened in the terrorist attacks of 9/11. And I did look for it. If I'm not mistaken, the Twin Towers are present in the final shot of the film in New York City. Yes.
That's interesting because a lot of films at that time were just removing them.
Spielberg kept them in Munich, I think.
Yeah, but that's because at that time it was a period piece. So at that time they would be there.
Right. But I think, well, the documentary made it out to seem as if, because when Munich was released, it was after 9/11.
Yeah.
And
well, he deliberately ended with that shot of the two towers, but either way they would be there because it was a period piece and the Twin Towers were there at that time.
Right. But in this one, I did notice the Twin Towers were standing.
And I loved that because it's like you go from this, like, you start off in like this almost fantastical post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah.
To transition to something that's more resemblance and like this vain idea of history that you maybe got from school. And then at the end, it's like, this was a real place. This was a real people. This, it's real. This all happened. And when you transition to modern times and you see the city there, how we know it today, that's really cool. And I really liked that. And again, I think that does translate to all the messages of who we are as a country and the good and the bad.
I really enjoyed this film. I suspect, though, that this movie is regarded as like among his lower tier.
Yeah, I think so. And I get it. Because I think overall, story-wise, it has less going on. It's pretty basic.
But the quality is still on screen.
Well, yeah. You know what? If we're going on like least favorite to most favorite, this one wouldn't actually be last for me. Another film would be last for me.
Which one?
And I think you're going to be surprised.
The Departed?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, let's go into that one. How?
Okay. Let me look up the
The Departed, which came out in 2006. Stars Jack Nicholson, Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, Mark Wahlberg, Alec Baldwin, Martin Sheen, Vera Farmiga. A lot of people are on that. A
lot of stars. Okay, this of course is provided by our sponsor, Letterboxd XD. Lies, betrayal, sacrifice. How far will you take it? To take down South Boston's Irish mafia, the police send in one of their own to infiltrate the underworld, not realizing the syndicate has done likewise. While an undercover cop curries favor with the mob kingpin, a career criminal rises through the police ranks, but both sides soon discover there's a mole among them. The Departed. And it's actually based on a foreign film.
It's a remake of a foreign film, I think.
I know it's called Infernal Affairs.
Right.
I can't remember if it's where it's from though. I think Japan. I know it's Asian, but I can't remember which country specifically. But yeah, from what you were saying, it seemed like you really liked it. So
well, I really liked these performances. But if I'm going to say this versus Gangs of New York, I'd go with this, because I was just more invested in, I think, the narrative, more than just one key relationship. I was invested by.
I will say maybe because of my upbringing, like historical period pieces in which they just dive into how day-to-day life was during that time period in that section of the world, I find extremely fascinating. Maybe that's because of my upbringing.
As do I. I love historical period pieces. Mm-hmm. I just thought this was a better film.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's why I think it probably edged out above The Departed for me.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's interesting because this is the film he won his Oscar for. That's not to say as if that's why I like it better, but I have noticed that there are people that really dislike this movie. Yeah.
That's weird to me. Even though it's not my favorite, it's really good.
Well, when we talked about it, you had mentioned of the fact that people thought that the film was way too literal and in your face about the message in the film, and that it was like.
Well, again, I had no idea that this was an issue for people, but I was scrolling through my phone, and then I read an article a while back about how someone had released an edited version of The Departed where they remove the rat from like the last shot of the film. And I guess to the fact that people have pushed for that so much that it got an edit by someone, that I guess that's a big deal for some people. Like, oh, I get it. He's a rat. To me, it's like, I didn't have an issue with that at all. I think that's great.
Well, let's get into what we liked about this movie. I'll just say for me is, I mean, not the best of Scorsese's crime films. I thought it was, I thought that the direction here was quite riveting in terms of the back and forth we had between, we have Matt Damon's Sullivan character, and we also have Leo's character, whose name I'm forgetting right now, but they're both basically moles, and
For
they're
opposing sides.
Exactly, and we kind of hop back and forth between that, and for me, I thought it was really well handled in terms of how
the narrative is really well done.
Exactly.
The story is really good.
And it kept getting more and more interesting as it went along, especially those last few minutes where you're just like, wait, what just happened?
Yeah.
Which was great. And again, to say nothing of, I think my favorite part of this is Jack Nicholson's performance.
Oh, yeah. They just gave Jack Nicholson some cocaine and threw him in front of a camera. He is depraved and loving it. No, he really stole the show.
No, he did. And one clip I keep going back to is just this one particular scene where they're finding out that they found this person's body, and then one of the guys says that he's embarrassed that he didn't do a good enough job of burying this person. And then he starts laughing at Jack Nicholson because of like he's doing such a good job. How can you not laugh at it? And then Nicholson's just like, "Don't laugh. This ain't reality TV." In the Nicholson voice.
Yeah.
I love Nicholson. I don't know what I can tell you. He's just great.
He's fantastic. He's great in this. He's you see why he got hired as the Joker, I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, let's see here. What do you want to start with this movie?
It's very Boston.
I shouldn't say anything. I'll just say, yeah, it's very Boston. It's like The Departed.
If Boston ever birthed the film, it would be this. Oh, there was something like the homophobia is like rampant in this film.
I read some stuff that's just interesting, but go ahead about that. Yeah.
Like it's really bad, but there was one part that it was just so ridiculous that I just laughed when he's telling what's his name, Alec Baldwin.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
he told him that he's gonna get married, and he's like, "That's good. No one will think you're gay." But he used another word.
Right. He used yeah.
But in the Boston accent, the way they say it, I'm like, oh my god, this is so like ridiculous. But I had. And this has been a while, because it's actually been a while since I've seen the film. But with this one, I remember seeing like a theory that...
Sullivan?
Which one's Sullivan?
Matt Damon.
That Matt Damon's character is actually secretly gay.
I read that as well. It's pretty interesting.
And I thought that was really interesting. That was a really interesting way to look at his character. And the little subtle hints to it.
I buy it. I think I mean if we're looking at the context clues, because there's more than just one or two moments where you get the impression he's really overcompensating.
But it also feels like everyone else in the film is too.
That's true. That's true. But
him specifically, yeah,
because he is in essence as a mole living a double life. Mm-hmm. So he's
so that could be another layer to it.
Exactly. And why I would think it would work in this instance. We also see other examples of, well, it's implied heavily that the baby that he had with Vera Farmiga wasn't his, because we saw that she had sex with Leo DiCaprio, and we also saw that they had problems in bed.
Let's be honest. If it's between Matt Damon and Leo, I'm going Leo.
I think everybody would.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a question there, but it's more to the fact that he was able to conceive.
Mm-hmm.
Damon wasn't.
Yeah.
And I think they made it pretty clear that he was having problems with that. And so, and that same scene talked about Alec Baldwin. I think Alec Baldwin was saying to Matt Damon, is your tinker working or something? And he's like, oh yes, sir. It's overtime, in fact. And I was like, okay.
Like really weird overcompensation.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found interesting.
Oh, don't forget the adult theater where he meets Jack Nicholson.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what pornography was playing. I don't know if it was lesbian or gay or whichever one, or maybe it was straight porn. I don't know. I couldn't tell. I don't remember what it was. But Nicholson comes up behind him with like a prosthetic when he jumps on him.
Yeah.
And which was hilarious. I don't know what. It was funny, I guess Nicholson was doing that, but
he's just fucking crazy.
But it's Jack Nicholson. What can I tell you?
Mm-hmm.
But the people that have this theory note that Matt Damon's character was visibly uncomfortable being seen in that area.
Yeah, like maybe he's been there before. Yeah, Scorsese has a thing for porn theaters. Do they still exist?
How would they?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's some novelty place and it's just like, hey, the last running porn theater. Scorsese can use it for his next film. Oh, what I found interesting, because I've always wondered, like, how does this work for undercover cops? Like, how are they not able to pull up from your, if you go in with a mobster, how are they not able to pull up like, hey, you used to be a cop, you used to be this, you used to be whatever. And I found it so interesting. They pull him straight from the academy and they're like, you're going to be doing this for years and you're not going to get paid until it's over.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. Like, that's a crazy commitment to do. And then it's like, and then what? You just go become a regular cop? Like, I don't know. And the way Scorsese was able to create tension, like, I was genuinely like scared for him.
Yeah.
Because I'm just imagining how I would be as an undercover cop in that moment. It's like, fuck, I wouldn't last a day. Because you really have to think on your feet. And there were several times where I really thought, oh shit, he's gonna get his head blown off. Leo specifically, like, that tension is really well done throughout the film. And also they are pretty liberal with who dies in the film. Like, just about everyone dies. Like, right. I think one of the biggest shockers at the time for the film was Leo dying. And the way he died.
It came out of nowhere, man. It came out of nowhere, yeah.
But that's what works so effectively. Like, this entire film, he had to play his cards right. And he had to do it for a very long time. And there were so many tense, close calls. And then at the 1 second where he thought he was okay, boom, it ended. Before he could even realize it. Like, I don't know. That really got me, and I thought
it did me too. And I was just I could only imagine a theater, people screaming when that would happen. It's like, what? Like, what just happened? Did you just
especially because he's the hero.
He's the main character of the film in a way. And this is happening moments after you're seeing Matt Damon's character finally get his just desserts in a way. Through all of that.
I loved, what's his name in this?
Mark Wahlberg?
Mark
Wahlberg, yeah.
Maybe yes, maybe no, maybe fuck you. Which I only saw this film once, so I'm not entirely sure. Was Mark Wahlberg a double?
Okay, but this is where we get to the area where I would go to you for these answers, because there were moments in the film, again, only seeing it one time, that genuinely left me confused. Especially in the initial moments of it. So, and I'm having a hard time piecing some of them together. So first and foremost, getting back to Frank Costello, Jack Nicholson's character. So it's revealed before he dies that he is an FBI informant.
Yes.
Explain to me. Okay, so I completely didn't know that. So the FBI was protecting him then, or how was it happening?
He's based on a real life individual, Whitey Bulger, who of course was notoriously an FBI.
Informant.
He did the same thing. FBI
I saw
informant.
that movie, Black Mass, with Johnny Depp.
Oh yeah, that's based off him.
Right,
that's literally based off him. This one is inspired by him.
Right.
Yeah, so from what it seems like is that like the FBI wouldn't tell the police force these things. They're not if someone is being an informant, especially for the FBI, it only goes as the people who know only go as far as the FBI. So from what it's in the film, it's like even if he got caught, he probably would have got a tap on the wrist and let go because the FBI went and stepped in and been like, no, you gotta let him walk. Yeah. But yeah, the whole time he was an informant, and that's how he was able to stay above water.
Which makes sense. And so what happens in what happens where he dies, basically? Was he not expecting that to happen if he was an FBI informant, or was that just Matt Damon betraying him full for it?
That was Matt Damon betraying him.
Okay, that's what
because Matt Damon was as dirty a cop as they come.
And he was trying to get out. Away from him, I think toward the end of the movie, there were scenes where Matt Damon was trying to get away from Frank and his influence.
And again, there is a bit of gray area with him because he got to him at a very young age.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not like it's just like, hey, Matt Damon, the asshole. Like, no, there is some gray area to the character.
There's also something going back to like the whole gay theories. There's this weird line, or maybe not weird if you consider that theory, that Matt Damon throws at Jack Nicholson as he's dying about him having no sons. Oh
yeah, I'm not sure. Like, how would that be gay? I don't know.
Well, he's that old and he has no sons to speak of. No, I think he emphasizes on that.
Well, I think it's more of like because he considered him a son, and basically just like, I'm not your son. You have no one.
And then
I bought it as that.
Other people in the theory would say, I think they point out to in a prior scene where Jack Nicholson is with his I don't know if it's wife or girlfriend, that the book she's reading is about how to get pregnant.
Oh yeah. Oh, so okay, that's right. I remember that. I remember seeing that. So it's like a secret dig as well. That a lot of, I think, if you really,
it could be repressed. You know,
a lot of this film is like. Here comes the word toxic masculinity, and kind of like examining that a bit again, because Jack Nicholson, this big tough, and everyone's constantly saying like, "Oh, I'm not a F word," so afraid of being effeminate or something. I will
say, I mean, he had Jack Nicholson's character Frank Costello had style, like how he would dress and everything.
Oh yeah, he did. He would do some crazy shit.
Not to reinforce a stereotype, but I mean, if it was made back in the 2000s, this would be a stereotype. If that was what Scorsese...
do you think the implication is that... I don't think he's gay.
I don't think. But,
no.
like, I think...
I think it's just more of, for everything that... all this projection of this big macho and he has sex with all these women, it's still... the fact that he can't have a son, like, it pokes... at his machismo, you know what I mean?
And I mean, the movie opens up with Nicholson, I think, at least it was the opening, if I can recall, where he says, like, look, I could have stopped being a gangster if all I cared about was the money. I think he really just was portrayed as this character that just loves this lifestyle and more than anything just likes to kill people and be what he is, and more than making money. Like, the money didn't interest him as much as all the other stuff, it seemed like. Whereas in Goodfellas, which we'll get to, it's mostly motivated by finance. these people of wanting to
Yeah.
live a rich life and everything. Whereas with Nicholson's case, it would appear as if it's the opposite, where he really gets a thrill out of it. He makes fun of this woman who falls after he shot her in the head early on in the movie.
He's one of the few Scorsese characters where it's like, he's just a fucking monster. But it's Jack Nicholson, so you at least are like attracted to him. In not in the, sexual sense specifically, but just more of like as a person.
He has a one-of-a-kind personality, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing. That's probably a good note if you're making a film with like a really depraved character. You have to use like a really magnetic actor to be able to get the audience to still stick with this character. You know what I mean?
Every scene he's in, I'm glued to the screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I really liked it. I thought it was a well done
Ending?
movie.
The ending real quick. So,
oh, yeah.
So the way that the ending plays out
This is where I got a little confused.
Yeah, so me too. So the ending, Leo gets shot by the actor who I know from Iron Man 3. If you recall, he was playing one of Aldrich Killian's like extremists, the bald guy.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Right,
Yeah.
from Shane Black's Iron Man 3. So that's how I remember him. And he in this movie, The Departed, he was essentially the best friend to Matt Damon, who, again, the theory suggests that he had romantic feelings for him. Different thing altogether. But so Matt Damon's best friend in the Force comes to his rescue, kills Leo, but then Matt Damon kills him. Mm-hmm. Which, that's the point where, like, well, why would you kill him?
I remember this making sense to me at the time, but it's... I'm gonna be honest, it's been a minute since I've seen the film, but I remember being like, oh yeah, of course he'd kill him.
No loose ends, I guess?
Something like that, yeah.
Because
I think at that point, he was kind of exposed.
Yeah.
Well,
remember that Leo had sent those tapes in the mail, that he had somehow gotten evidence of the phone calls that he'd had with Jack Nicholson. Mm-hmm. And that's when Vio Farmiga is listening to them, then she just walks out of his life and everything. So it's like he has evidence, and then he mentioned in the mail that where did he get this evidence from again? I don't recall for who. And I guess maybe Mark Wahlberg was involved in that, or I guess it's alluded to, because I don't know how else he would have known, other than perhaps he just knew and just went to go kill him.
See, that's the thing. Was Mark Wahlberg also a double agent? I don't know what the word
Are you
is.
saying that Wahlberg was with the mob the entire time?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Was he part of the mob too? And then it's like, and he didn't even know about it. What's his name? Matt Damon.
Yeah.
But then after all that shit happened, it's like, hey, this dude, take him out. Or was Mark Wahlberg just like a cop that was willing to go the extra step and said, I know this dude's fucking dirty, fuck this guy, so he just went in and killed him?
The latter is what I assumed, but the way that you put it, it could be either or. Yeah. Because how would Wahlberg know? Unless he just had a good feeling. Unless maybe I don't know if this has ever been discussed, but Leo could have also sent the tapes to him.
Maybe. Again, it's been a while since I've seen it. I don't remember like the point by point, but I remember having this feeling of like, it's two possibilities. Either because didn't before he was taken off the case, like he had a bad feeling about him, or like they were fighting constantly.
Wahlberg and Damon were at each other's throats. Yeah, the entire movie basically. So
maybe he just realized like, oh, this dirty cop, and he's like, fuck it, I'm taking the law into my own hand, killed him. Or, which might be the most, what's probably what actually happened, is that he was also a part of the mob, and they hit out on him, so he came in and killed him. Huh. I don't know.
Maybe it's worth doing a commentary on that movie, or just reopening again and seeing what it was.
I really need to rewatch it.
It's been a long time. But I kind of love the movie. I thought it was good.
That's good.
Okay, so Casino.
I love Casino.
Yeah.
Want to give us the time frame for this one?
This was 1995. As old as I am. This is the year of Toy Story and Forrest Gump.
I wasn't alive yet. Okay. Here is our synopsis, again provided by Litterbox XD. No one stays at the top forever. In early 1970s Las Vegas, low-level mobster Sam Ace Rothstein gets tapped by his bosses to head the Tangiers Casino. At first, he's a great success in the job, but over the years, problems with his loose cannon enforcer Nikki Santoro, his hustler wife Ginger, her con artist ex Lester Diamond, and a handful of corrupt politicians put Sam in ever-increasing danger. Now, like Casino, similarly to the film we'll talk about after this one, Goodfellas, it's pretty... it's influenced by real events. I think this one says inspired by real events, while the other one, Goodfellas, is based on a true story. And so that should tell you this one definitely changes it up a more. But the stuff that happens to do with like the politician, where everything goes wrong, is real. The stuff about how they found out, like the taps in the taps that they were tapping someone's grocery store. I think it was actually a restaurant, and they were able to find out about all this stuff in the book. All that's real. Rothstein was based off a real dude. Rick Santoro, that's his name, right? He's definitely based off a real dude. So yeah, and then of course the wife Ginger. But yeah, I really love this one. This one is easily one of my favorite Scorsese films. To me, I find this film endlessly entertaining.
It is.
It's so entertaining. Like it's a film. I don't care at what point the film is. If I catch a glimpse of it, I have to watch the rest of it. I love the sort of like old fashioned, this sort of almost fairy tale like place that Las Vegas used to be. You know what I mean? And the fact that it takes place during that time period, and of course with the flair of Scorsese, it's so interesting, and it's also some of my favorite characters that he's tackled.
Absolutely, and I mean, the movie kind of just starts off and goes, and kind of just drenches you with these wonderful voiceovers. That carry out throughout the film.
Nothing but voiceover.
So we have Robert De Niro, who's playing Rothstein here, who is the casino manager, if you will. And the mob gets involved. The mob's whole operation here is involved with taking money out of the casino and into their pockets.
This is when the mobs ruled Vegas.
Yes. One point of clarification, and I wasn't entirely sure. So Rothstein allows this to happen, right? Or is he not aware?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
No. He worked for the mob. He started out giving them bets, like, because that's who Rothstein is. He's a really good at bet taker. You know,
they call him a bookie, right? A bookie.
Isn't
that what it is?
I don't know. I think
that's what they refer to him in the movie, a bookie.
Okay, I'm not a gambler. I don't know.
Well, he is a gambler.
Yes, that's his thing.
Yeah,
that he's really good at it, and like he never takes a bet that he's not like 100% sure on. So he really does his homework before placing bets, and that gets the mob a lot of money. So they promote him. They send him over to Nevada to oversee the casinos, and then that's his job. So he knows they're skimming off the top. That's the whole point he's there, is to make sure that the casinos continue to succeed and to make sure the bosses back home get their cut.
So it's one of the interesting things that's kind of a degree of separation, and maybe it's because of how often Nick points this out, portrayed by Joe Pesci. that Rothstein is Jewish, and he's working for the mob, which interesting, because they're not the most inclusive group from what we've seen.
Well, it's like Goodfellas to a certain extent. We'll talk about that next, but the two main characters, two of them, or there's three main characters, two of them are not full Irish.
Right.
So they can never be fully made
Italian.
into. No, sorry, they're not full Italian.
Right.
They're Irish on, I think, the mom's side for one of them or whatever.
Right.
Only one of them is full Italian. So only one of them can actually get made into the mob. And from what it seems like is that the mob, they had a lot of people that they worked with, but based on their heritage, they would never be full members of the mob, of the family, basically, so to say. They work closely with them, but they will never be made. And that was the word they'd call it, being made.
Mm-hmm. That's the term.
And of course, he's one of the people, Rothstein.
Right, that wouldn't be made.
Yeah.
But Nicky is.
Yeah, he was an enforcer.
The performances, I mean, I feel like I have like a broken label.
I loved them.
Like a broken record here, but it's make sure the kids hear words. Sorry, I had to. De Niro is fantastic in this. So is Sharon Tate. Wait, is it Sharon Tate?
Sharon Stone.
Okay, whoops, thought of the wrong one. Sharon Stone, and Joe Pesci is, I mean, like
at his pesciest.
Yeah,
like
which is saying something.
Full Pesci for this one, and to be fair, the character that he plays definitely
requires that.
Requires it. And like the real guy that he's based on, like there was no exaggeration really. When it comes to the real life guy compared to the movie. Like he was that brutal in real life. Like his whole hole in the wall gang where they would go out and rob. And that, I think that's the reason why I really love this film. Cause I'm a sucker for those like historical pieces where you learn a lot in entertaining ways, but it also had really interesting characters with a really interesting story. So it had both ends of the spectrum for me. And like the whole stuff of like, even though the mob controlled everything that was going on there, they needed tourism. So they didn't want any like on the ground gangster shenanigans actually happening in the city. That was until what's his name got there. Nicky, Pesci's character. He was the one that brought the mob
to
Vegas in a big nasty way. And, you know, they mention it several times in the film, the holes in the desert. A brutal time for Vegas.
Absolutely. Also, on the flip side, I mean, of course, I agree. I love Pesci in this, and he's probably at his Pesci-est, as you say. I also really love De Niro in this movie, and in a way that, you know, most of the characters that he had played before this, especially in Scorsese's films, were kind of hideous human beings. For the most part, maybe all of them. And not to say that this guy is an angel, but like this is the closest you get to of De Niro playing a likable guy in these movies.
He's not a gangster.
Yeah,
really, and he's not. Like he's a gambler. He's a money guy, right? Like he doesn't deal with all of that like killing and all that shit. He's still like he's a dick, obviously, but he's not a gangster in that way. That's why Nicky's there, basically, because he's not that guy. So the mob sends Nicky to be that guy for him. But you can tell. I think what's at least admirable for the character in the film is that he's very much a businessman, and like he takes his work very seriously. And I think that's a trait that even when he does some worse things within the film and makes some bad decisions, that's kind of an admirable trait. And I remember, I don't remember if I read this or I saw a video on it, that they said a good way to make a quote unquote bad character is to give them at least one admirable trait. about them, something that the audience can hold on to. And I think that's one of the things that you have here with De Niro is like, yeah, he's working for the mob, he's doing shady shit. Let's not get started on his relationship with his wife. That's a whole other thing. But he has this like somewhat admirable, like very strong work ethic that is undeniable.
I agree with that. Not to unravel this, but what did you make of the dynamic between him and Sharon Stone in that very toxic relationship?
That's where most of the entertainment for me came in this film.
Yeah.
Because, like, holy shit. Just imagine the most toxic relationship ever.
Like, it didn't go the way I thought it would. The way that I thought it was going to go, knowing the history of the other, De Niro characters that I've seen in Scorsese's films, I inevitably thought that she would want to leave him because she was going to get bored, and then he was somehow just going to like destroy her or kill her or whatever, because that's how it usually goes, I feel, with him. But no, I mean, he really did love her. He tried his best to make her love him, but that never happened. And she also,
it was futile from the beginning.
It was, but she's also a self-destructive creature, and she kept getting worse and worse and worse, and she inevitably left. Well, she left several times, but when she did leave, she was the one that caused her own fate.
And that's what's interesting, because with either of them, they're not what you would call, like, well, they both have very bad qualities about them, but it's not like it's specifically one person or the other's reason why they broke up. Like, they're both just kind of toxic people and bad people. And like from the very beginning, she made it pretty clear, like, she didn't want to get married, she was this, but he had to have her. So he literally bribed her with money to get married. Like, hey, I can give you this, and if you want to run away, I'm gonna stash away all this diamonds and stuff for you if you ever want to leave. And did what he could, despite the fact, knowing probably deep down she didn't feel the same. And then, of course, she's a toxic person who seems like it just needs to consume and consume and consume, and it's never enough. And not just like money, but like drugs and stuff. Like always looking for that next high. And of course, the next high will never be enough. I found the relationship really explosive and therefore entertaining. They had some of the best acting scenes together. I really enjoyed whenever they were exploring their relationship, because it was a toxic one.
Another toxic one was also the strained relationship between Rothstein and Nikki. Because I think from the beginning, you got the sense that Rothstein just knew that if Nikki were to move here, he would fuck it all up. And lo and behold, he
fucked it all up.
He fucked it all up. And like, he's trying to help him also, but like, there are moments where he makes him aware of like, you got to be more careful in this. They're right there. They're looking at you. And Nikki is just like, will you relax? I know what I'm doing. And it's like, it just gets more and more and more strained to the point where there's like this confrontation in the desert where like Nikki is angry that Rothstein went behind his back and contacted the bosses back home to help him locate his wife and other stuff. All the meantime, Nikki wanting to pursue a relationship with his wife. So,
and that's the biggest no-no in the mob. You do not fuck with other people's wives.
Why? They have no regard for women in marriage at all. So why?
Because, well, that's kind of the weird
hypocrisy,
contradiction with these people, right?
Yeah.
Because they're deeply religious, but they engage in murder and crime and some of the worst things. They have very old-fashioned beliefs, but they don't really, hold to them that well. So it's like they'll cheat on their wives like crazy, whatever. But like at the end of the day, they're like, well, the wife is the wife, and you don't touch that.
See,
And I think,
yeah, so they're fine with them cheating on other people, but they can't cheat on a friend's wife.
yeah, because then that starts drama. Like you theoretically, you could see like a whole family fall, like a mafia family fall apart through internal fighting and spill into the streets with war over some shit like that. You just don't do it.
I mean,
It messes up business.
As we've seen with these movies, anything can mess anything up.
Yeah. There's so many little things within the film that actually did happen. Like, when the FBI was listening to them when they were golfing and the plane landed.
Really?
That actually happened.
Really?
Yeah.
And it landed because it ran out of gas or something?
Actually, it was due to plane malfunction. But they really did land right there in the middle of the golf game and then like run away. Like there's even like real life newsreels that I saw on YouTube. It's like a plane had to land in a golf course today due to and you could tell it's like from 1980 or whatever when it took place, and I was like, oh shit, like, oh, that's real. This film has some of like the most brutal violence of any Scorsese film, and it catches you so off guard because out of all of them, I feel like this film will be really light. Like it's Vegas, like you're in all the indulgence and the lifestyle, and then you'll turn a corner and it's like brutal violence.
I mean, just a couple of things as far as Pesci is concerned. I mean, he literally stabs somebody with a pen. He kills a woman in her home in the early morning, just like with a shot to the back of the head. Many more of those. I mean, the ending.
Well, the way Pesci goes out.
That was I couldn't believe what I was watching. I mean, it's perfect because I think it's being teased the entire time. But that was just...
It is brutal. Like his own crew. Well, by this point, he's been fucking around for so much, for so long, just daring the bosses back home to kill him, and finally they've had enough of it, so they meet out someplace with the brother under the pretense of, I think, being made. His brother was gonna be made and sort of the thing. So they meet together out in the fields, and then immediately his own people, his own guys, his crew, take out bats and beat the shit out of him and his brother. And like they beat them to a pulp, drag them to graves, and then bury them alive. And like they are still alive as they're being buried. And they show you in detail all of this. And I've seen, like, I like horror films. I've seen a lot of nasty shit. This is something that still gets to me. And again, pretty in line with what happened in real life. Yeah.
It's a pretty brutal scene, and it almost leaves you with that. I mean, there's something else that happens afterward, but that's kind of the final sequences in the film that we see. And it's pretty dramatic. I mean, as you say, they were being beaten up by these baseball bats, and beaten up as if they're left bloody. I mean, they're left completely bloody, disfigured. For whatever reason, they're stripped, and then
their clothes,
and then they're just thrown in this hole, and they're like, you can hear them audibly just agonize in pain. And then they're just being buried alive. I think one shot is where like Pesci is screaming, and then like dirt just goes in his mouth as he's being buried.
It's pretty graphic. There's also the other point when they got the 5 families in court, so they have a meeting because they're like, we need to cut all loose ends out there. and they're literally having a conversation where it's like, I can't remember who they're talking about.
It's
but like,
I know who it is, but I don't remember the name. It was one of the first guys that we see in the movie that basically is like this middleman between Rothstein and the bosses. He's the guy that recruits Rothstein to run the casino.
he's the kind that's like, he's not made, but he's
an ally.
he works with them. Yeah. And everyone's like, hey, he's rock solid. He was rock solid like his dad. Like he's great. Like, you know, he's a good kid. You know, he should, you know, he shouldn't be part of our hit list, basically. And everyone's going around, you know, the table saying this. But then the main guy's just like, why risk it? And then like that, he's dead.
Why take the chance?
Like it's crazy. It good. That's what I think Scorsese's gangster films are really good at showing, is they show you the thrills of being in this lifestyle and understand why you would fall into it, and then just the absolute horrors and how it just like disappears like that. In the most gruesome fashion. It's literally happening behind you right now.
Oh yeah, because Goodfellas is playing behind me. Oh yeah, that's about to happen. Oh yeah, that's right. So overall with Casino, you're right. I think it's simultaneously one of his most entertaining films, and also one of his most, if not most, brutal film.
Oh, and a quick thing before we leave it. This is one of like two other films where it's literally the story of how we're going to talk about one of them, and the second one right now, where someone just gets into this kind of life, has a very rises and then falls, and then it's just kind of he survives it, and he's just kind of a normal person at the end of the day. What's interesting is that very recently, because in real life, the one who plays Rothstein, that's the same thing that happened to him too. I think he died of old age or something.
Rothstein,
like that.
or you're talking about Ray Liotta's character in Goodfellas?
No, I'm talking about Casino still. This is the last point. It's been uncovered recently that there's evidence to suggest that he was actually an informant. The real life
Rothstein
guy,
right?
And then you have zero hint of that in the film, but that's because that evidence wasn't out there at the time. But most recently, there's been some evidence found that's like, this guy was maybe an informant. And if you look at it, it's like, how did all of that go down and he still ended up living at the end of the day and not doing jail time?
Yeah,
so I thought that was
something about when the movie all ended. It's like, how is it that he was never arrested or anything?
No charges, no arrested. How? Why? Yeah. Oh, and then that like little TV show he used to do, that was real too. I don't know. Sorry, I'm gonna keep bringing up shit. Let's talk about the creme de la creme.
The creme de la creme of Goodfellas, right? That's the movie. It's called Goodfellas
because he's a good fella.
He's a good fella. Yeah. Tell us, oh great one, the synopsis for the classic film Goodfellas.
What year was it released?
This is the year 1990. Once again, these descriptions are brought to you by our sponsor, Letterboxd.
XD. Letterboxd.
Isn't it just Letterboxd?
Letterboxd?
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever. 3 decades of life in the mafia. The true story of Henry Hill, a half-Irish, half-Sicilian Brooklyn kid who is adopted by neighborhood gangsters at an early age and climbs the ranks of a mafia family under the guidance of Jimmy Conway. Okay. Sorry. Instead of talking about the film, Alexis has decided to turn around and simply watch the film. He's actually watching one of the best shots in the film, which is the crane shot into the back of the meat truck with the body. Goodfellas is one of the best films ever made. It is Scorsese at his prime.
It's hypnotic. It's hypnotic.
Chef's
it's
kiss.
exhilarating. It's exciting. It gives you the kind of emotions that you look for if you want to be thrilled by movies. And I think this is probably one of the best examples of it. It's engrossing. It's extraordinarily detailed. It's shot beautifully. The vistas, the lighting, the performances, the direction, the writing. I don't know if I said that twice, but the writing, it is, I think, again, as I mentioned, Roger Ebert, who we're big fans of, one of the most legendary film critic of all time, referred to Goodfellas as the best film of the decade. Of the 1990s.
It's as a film, it's instantly
Can I just
recognizable.
say, Peter, I don't mean to interrupt you too much, but there was something that we had neglected to mention back in Casino, and that was the fact that I do believe it had gotten some lukewarm responses when it was released back in 95.
I did not know that.
Gene Siskel, for example, was not too thrilled with the movie. I think he was just kind of like whatever on the movie when it was released. Of course, as Ebert usually does, he defended the accomplishments of the film. But if I'm not mistaken, I do believe reading that Casino was regarded as good, not great, when it was released back in 95.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Scorsese was his boy.
Ebert. Yeah.
Ebert. Mm-hmm. This is the film that I think everyone knows Pesci for.
Yeah.
This is where your stereotypical
and
Pesci
Ray Liotta for the most part.
And Ray Liotta, yeah. This was Ray Liotta's. I don't know if it was his breakout film, but it's certainly because he's pretty young when he came out on this film, 1990. It has to be. It's his
most well-known movie, I would say.
Mm-hmm. It's great. It's great. It's the simple rise and fall of a gangster. Like that's the whole film. That's it in a nutshell. The most iconic scene.
I'm sorry, I'm just watching the movie as Peter is talking. Continue.
When they kill Joe Pesci. That's another thing. In real life, that character, they don't know how he died. They never found his body.
I mean, there's Casino, for an example. And I believe the opening moments of the film show them burying a body, which is a common practice.
Mm-hmm. But I mean,
if you're a bad guy, I didn't mean it was a common practice to just bury a body like that.
Well, you know, what you do on the weekend is your business. Like this is where you have like classic De Niro and classic Pesci. You know, this is where you got really De Niro like, hey, don't fucking look at me. You know, like I can't do a De Niro voice, but that's where you really get both in a big bad way. This is where you see a lot of the techniques that Scorsese first tried out and stuff like Mean Streets just perfected in this film. The camera moves, the music accompanied with sweeping shots of characters moving through restaurants and bars.
I'll put it to you this way.
The voiceover.
I'll put it to you this way. I feel like this is what Mean Streets would have been like had he made Taxi Driver and Raging Bull before. Because you can definitely see all of the craft that he had grown into, all put into this movie. And if I'm not mistaken, I know that we have both discussed, you know, Taxi Driver is our favorite Scorsese film. Raging Bull is considered to be the magnum opus amongst the critics. Although, I guess, again, as you say that many people have their own version of a masterpiece for Scorsese, Goodfellas is another one of those.
Goodfellas is the common man's Scorsese masterpiece.
Common man? What do you mean by the commoners?
Where it's like, if you take a random person off the street, and if they happen to know who Scorsese is, and you ask them what's his best film, Goodfellas.
Yeah.
Goodfellas. Like, I see a lot of people, like, as far as like mafia films, gangster flicks or whatever, most people rank this as the best one.
Yeah.
A lot of people, and I don't know if it's recently, probably recently within the past decade or two, they're even ranking it above stuff like The Godfather. Like, this is, I think to most people, like I said, this is the creme de la creme. Because it's...
Hold on.
It
Hot
is...
take.
Oh, okay.
Hot take.
Mm-hmm. Hot take.
Would you put it above The Godfather?
Don't do this to me. I don't know. I actually feel they're very different films. I feel like the Godfather is much more romantic.
Yes, it is.
In a way. Whereas Goodfellas is more... I don't know, not... and that's not a negative or a positive. It's just, I feel they're very different. Trying to say which one is better, to me, is entirely futile.
We're talking about, too,
know.
it's like asking what's a better film, The Shining or 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's like, it's like they're both amongst the best films of all time. Just celebrate them both. But I mean, everybody asks that question. It's just a curious one. It comes down to a matter of personal preference. I'd still say The Godfather. I mean, because I think that's...
But I think the reason why people say Goodfellas is because it's more accurate to the day-to-day life, the realistic life of what...
Would you say that it's also more fun to watch the lifestyle of Goodfellas and Godfather?
It's so much... It's entertaining at a mile a minute. And The Godfather, of course, it's more slow. It's a slower film. It's more of a slow epic, where this is much entertainment mile a minute. But this one, like, all the characters work. What's the actor again? The main character?
Ray Liotta.
Ray Liotta, as a character, you feel for him because you understand why does what he does. He's not necessarily a bad person, and you can tell he doesn't like partaking in the violence and a lot of the other stuff. He doesn't
care for it. I mean, he's shown as somebody who tolerates it, but it's not something that really gets him going.
He doesn't revel in it.
Yeah, he doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that
he kind of has a disdain for.
He does, but it's just something that he has to do. So he doesn't really question it in that regard because of the perks that he gets in the Mafia. And really, I think what this film does better than any of the other movies is that it really sells you on why somebody like Liotta would want to be a part of this lifestyle and why it's been so, I guess, successful in terms of the mob's recruitment status, I guess you could say.
He's someone that didn't have a lot of options, and the Mafia
provided a good one.
That it was a very good option to him, you know what I mean? And like his relationship between him and his wife was very interesting, where it's like, again, another toxic relationship, but she found that lifestyle a bit attractive, and then she is kind of complicit in a lot of the things that he does. And the thing is, though, you
can't blame her because the film does such a good job of making it so attractive, especially that scene when they're, I think, one of their first dates, or maybe their second dates.
The first date didn't go well. The second
one went a lot better. So where they go to this popular club, they walk through the back. It's like, it's basically, you're acting as if you're the president and the first lady, and everybody else around you is acting that way. You go to...
Everyone there is like, oh, nice to see you. Everyone's shaking his hand.
And they literally go to the front, and they have people just make a table for them right then and there. To the very front of the stage where they have the band and everything.
And you can see where you would very much be attracted. One, you would be attracted to want to partake in that lifestyle.
Absolutely.
And to be attracted to someone else that maybe is partaking in that lifestyle. Like, you get it.
Power is a very attractive thing, baby. I'll just tell you that.
And it, like, by the time you reach the end of the film and where everything's getting just completely fucked, like, you completely buy how they started out in the beginning and how they ended up completely fucked by the end. You see the clear line of where that journey took them. And I think that's really hard to do. Believably anyway. But this film just did it effortlessly.
And also, it can be considered the most definitive gangster movie because of just the different the range of the characters is also pretty remarkable because, as we just mentioned, that Leota's character, he's not someone that really revels in murder, that kind of stuff, or the violence, but we know somebody who does, and it's kind of a maniac, and that is Joe Pesci.
And he represents the type of gangster that could get made, that could be officially part of the family, right? Mm-hmm. And then De Niro is that sort of crazy individual that's on the outside, though. And then, of course, the mob boss. I can't remember
which one though.
Who the
Sal?
Paulie? Sorvino. Yeah, Paulie. Yeah. So yeah, you really see it kind of from all aspects, and it's a great way of breaking down what the life is, what it entails, how you would get into it, and how you would fall from it. And yeah, probably the most iconic scene in the film is you laughing at me? Am I a clown?
Yeah, that was something out of this world. Like he's just laughing at him, and Leota's like, you're you know what, you're so funny. And then like Pesci's like, yeah, what's so funny? It's like, what? And like I'm like, I think in the end it ends up being a joke, right? But it's like,
yeah, he was fucking with him.
You don't think that for a long time. Like, you really think, like, this guy is that, like, oh, fuck, what's going to happen?
That's why the scene is so great. You could go from just, like, you're the best of friends with these people to being completely terrified in a second.
That was scary.
Yeah. It's so well done and so encapsulates what the lifestyle is just within that scene. Like, I don't know. Funnily enough, this is one of my favorite, probably second favorite of all of Scorsese films, and I feel like it's the most difficult to talk about because it's like, what can you say about the film that hasn't been said 1.5 million times?
Yeah, I'm kind of all of a sudden I'm kind of at a struggle to say what's next to say that hasn't already been said. I mean, it's a great film, and it does everything great for all of the reasons of which we just discussed, and it's loved for all of the reasons that we just said. And there really isn't all that much more to say, but it's just a damn great movie. And like, if I'm looking at the Scorsese films that I've seen, I do believe this is like the second one, my second favorite of the bunch. Only because, well, duh. And it's kind of like this film in 1990 with Goodfellas, this is kind of the culmination of all of the different things that Scorsese had been working up toward. Yes, he made more gangster movies after Goodfellas than before Goodfellas, but as we said, he really did employ a lot of the sensibilities that he had learned from in all the other films, from Raging Bull and Taxi Driver, New York, and Temptation of Christ, and all these other things. And he made what I would think is what he wanted to do with Mean Streets in a way. I mean, it's bigger in scale and scope than Mean Streets, but you definitely do get I guess somebody would say Scorsese in his not in The Greatest Powers, or I guess his greatest powers, and deliver something that is
talent.
Yes, talent. I guess you could say. Yeah. My top 3 are Raging Bull, Goodfellas, and Taxi Driver. Although that may change because I do like Raging Bull a lot, but there are others that are more entertaining than that, personally, like Casino. So yeah, it's just a great movie.
Yeah.
What else can you say except for, oh yeah, this didn't win Best Picture, did it?
No. I think it lost to was it the Romeo and Juliet film?
You're kidding me.
I think it was that one, or Shakespeare in Love. It was one of those two.
Dances with Wolves?
It lost to Dances with Wolves?
Dances with Wolves was the Best Picture winner.
Why was I thinking Shakespeare in
Well,
Love?
it was close or around there, wasn't it, when it was released? And it's for the Academy, for the movies that were released in 1990, which Goodfellas was, the film that won Best Picture for the year of 1990. Of course, the broadcast was 91, but it was Dances with Wolves.
Yeah, should have been Goodfellas.
I think you could say the same with Taxi Driver and Raging Bull and other films. The Departed did win Best Picture, right? That year? Alongside with Scorsese getting his first directing.
I don't remember. I think so, though. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it did. Yeah, I did. If I remember, yeah, it did. Which, I mean, yeah, good. Good. Finally,
for that. I'm at a loss for what else to say other than this is probably as... this will maybe... I'll say that perhaps in this next generation, when we're looking back on this, it wouldn't surprise me, and I feel it already has in some ways, that Goodfellas could overtake Taxi Driver and Raging Bull as like Scorsese's best film, but I kind of feel it already has. So
I feel like it already has for most people. Anyway.
Yeah.
I think it's seen as his best. As far as critics go, I don't know, because I know at the time they did think Raging Bull was, but I'm cool. I like Goodfellas more. So
yeah, but again, we're all talking about such great films in the first place. Well, if there's nothing else that we can say about Goodfellas, I think these 4 films that we discussed today are just more examples of the kind of movies that are great, clearly. But it is important to note, while most of Scorsese's films weren't runaway box office hits, I do believe all of these were moderate, if not big successes relative to their budgets when they were released.
Yeah, I don't think any of these lost money.
Now, today,
if any of these were released in a theater, I don't know if they would make money.
I don't think anybody would care. That's just the sad reality, right? Like these movies that are like so cherished and beloved now, if they were just dropped in a theater, I don't think anybody would even fucking notice. Unless it was like Marvel Studios presents Goodfellas.
If Martin Scorsese was directing, I don't even fucking know, an X-Men movie, oh my god.
Well, it's like, I remember...
people would be there.
Remember the late, great John Schnepp? We used to watch him on Movie Talk, first in the AMC, then the Collider days. But I remember him, I don't know if he was just being like, he was just joking around or being serious, but when when Disney first purchased Lucasfilm, and then there was the announcement that a lot of more movies besides episodes 7, 8, and 9 were being developed, I think he went on Movie Fights, and he was like making his case for like, all right, pitch your Star Wars movie. And he was saying, let's have a Jabba the Hutt gangster movie directed by Martin Scorsese. And the sad thing is, though, is that would likely be the easiest film that Scorsese would be able to get financed. He wouldn't probably want to do it, but if he wanted a big budget, that would be one that would not only be the easiest to be picked up, the easiest to finance, but perhaps the one that would get the masses' attention in an instant. A Martin Scorsese Jabba the Hutt gangster film.
I'm just trying to imagine what that would look like. Because, like, you're gonna have Jabba in an abusive relationship with his wife, where they fight and throw shit at the wall.
It's hard because
you're gonna have him.
You can't
telling other gangsters to go fuck themselves.
You can't have a rated R Star Wars movie because that's not Star Wars, which is kind of the inevitable problem that Star Wars features. Or I guess you could make a Disney Plus series on the Hutts. Well, let me ask you this question: if such a thing were to happen, would you watch it?
No,
you really wouldn't watch it. Even the Scorsese was doing it.
Because I know behind the scenes, Scorsese is just like dying. And it's like this poor man. Like the only way I would ever see him doing it is if he has like a really great gangster movie and no one will fund it. And with all his might, he wants to.
He'll just Joker it.
So he Jokers it, and like he makes the characters, and he just kind of like takes it and applies it to Star Wars. But this is the thing: like Star Wars gangsters are nothing like real life gangsters. It's a fucking kids. It's a kids movie. I know it's very hard for people to understand this. It is a kids movie, and not only is it a kids movie, it is very, very much a kids movie. Yeah, I don't know. You have to bring the mood down.
Why? Because it's just the reality that would happen?
Yeah, but you didn't have to bring it up.
Okay. Well, the next episode in our Scorsese series is going to feature 4 more films, and this is what you call miscellaneous. So we have Shutter Island, Silence, Hugo, and The Wolf of Wall Street, which are his most recent films leading up to Irishman, which we'll be able to see on Netflix at the end of this month and have a subsequent review to wrap up our Scorsese series on it. And I'm quite excited for the next episode. I really love 2 films that I've seen, and I've yet to see the other 2, but
oh, okay. I thought you were gonna say I love 2 films and I don't the other 2.
I haven't seen the other 2, but the ones that I have seen, I was
gonna be like, woof, hot takes.
No.
Okay. And also, yeah, the other 4 we're gonna discuss are maybe not discussed as much as these other ones. Yeah. So I think there'll be some fun, interesting things to say about them.
It's interesting because they also did varying degrees of success. I would guess that I know Shutter Island was a box office success, although critically speaking, maybe it's not as loved. It really isn't. Although Wolf of Wall Street was successful, and I think also garnered a Best Picture nomination, as well as Hugo. Hugo also got a Best Picture nomination. Silence was all but ignored, so that was a disaster financially speaking.
I think his last hit was maybe The Wolf of Wall Street.
Silence was not a hit.
I feel like that was no.
Nobody.
It was basically ignored.
I don't understand when that happens. It's Scorsese, and like, I understand why it wasn't a success at the box office, but if it's as good as you say it is, and as you say, if the Academy Awards they're not, but if they are supposed to be about, promoting the kind of films that people wouldn't go see, you would think, at the very least, this film would have garnered some kind of nominations or talk, but it wasn't even talked about. The surprise was that it wasn't just ignored by audiences, it was ignored by critics.
Well, yeah. It's the politics game.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we're going to have an interesting time if we're going to see Knives Out. I'm kind of stressing about that because I really want to see Knives Out, and I really want to see Jojo Rabbit, and I really want to see other films, but
we'll see if we'll be able to.
We're going to have to board, I guess, some kind of a ship at the Mos Eisley spaceport, and I don't know, Lightspeed to some other place that gets some actual movies in their theaters. But this will be the closing part of the episode. I want to thank Peter for being here. I also want to remind you guys that the next episode we'll be talking about the films that we just discussed, will be teased, or that I just teased right now. And also, if you're interested about The Mandalorian, Kyle Lira is doing, first of all, he's doing the Lightspeed the 9 series, where he's doing retrospect episodes in all of the Star Wars films. But in addition to that, he's also said that he will be doing weekly reviews of The Mandalorian, which are going to be on Disney+, which apparently Peter has already cracked the code about what the ending is going to be for The Mandalorian. So,
You want to give like your one sentence impression of the Mandalorian?
Why? I did. I was on that episode with Kyle.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
I did a whole episode with Kyle. By the time this episode drops, it would have already been on the Fantasy Fair.
That would have already been out. Yeah.
It's dropping Fridays.
Go over there and listen to that.
So it's more than 1 minute, and everything. So, yay! From what I understand, you're more than welcome to come on the Fantasy Fair and review The Mandalorian, which you liked it. So,
yeah, but I don't think I have time to review.
No, we don't. So, thank you all for listening so much. I want to remind you guys you can catch our podcasts anywhere you listen to podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Google, YouTube, all. We're still working on launching Red Spotlight Plus. We'll see where that happens. And also, thank you to our sponsor, Letterboxd XD or Letterboxd.
Letterboxd?
I just assume it's Letterboxd, and then if it's XD, it's just boxed.
Letterboxd. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all so much. Catch us here under the spotlight, and bye-bye.